Howdy friends, this is Bob Hutton. This is the Encourager. Yesterday we spoke about these words at the end of Matthew chapter 9, where Jesus went about through the countryside. He taught in the synagogues and he proclaimed the good news about the kingdom of God to all the people. He healed people, delivered them from all sicknesses and diseases. They saw the multitudes. He was moved with compassion because they were like sheep without a shepherd. They were hassled and they didn't have any orientation. They weren't protected. And he called his disciples to him. He says, listen guys, the harvest, that's what he called this sea of humanity. He said the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest that he sends workers into his harvest field. Now, when I told you, if you were with me last year, I told you how I became a Christian. I was 17 years old. It was on the 1st of July 1970. I can still remember it quite clearly. I gave my life to Jesus, and then I started to live as a Christian. A lot of things changed in my life immediately. Some things I'm still trying to change up to now that I become more and more like Jesus. I started to learn the Christian disciplines. I started to read my Bible, try to study the Bible, try to understand it, trying to find out what God wanted from me. I also started to pray and started to talk to God, and there's lots of other things. Some things I still struggle with. I'm not completely through with it, but God is helping me. Now, one of the things that is important is that we have fellowship with other Christians, with people who are like-minded, and they help us, they encourage us. And so I started going to church then. I was a soldier and I was living in a garrison in Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. So I started going to the garrison church on Sunday morning, and that was a Methodist church. That was nice, but it wasn't really very challenging. So in the evening I would go in the town, and there was an American mission church. So I went there. It was from the Dutch Reformed Church of America. Very interesting name. And that was quite good. We had good fellowship with different people, international people. And then a little bit later I found out there's another church. There was actually quite a few churches there, but another church, and this met in a back street up some steps. The people sat on the floor and they were all Indians. Oh, and I loved it there. I mean, they were very, very loud. I didn't understand a word they were saying because they were speaking in a language called Malayalam. And they came from Kerala in southeast India. But I just loved that. I loved to pray with them. As I said, they were very loud, very emotional, very lively. And one day they said, we're going to have some special meetings during this week. And we've got a man who's coming to visit us. He's coming from New Delhi, the capital city of India. And we're so excited about this. And then apparently there was a few churches in Bahrain with Indians, and they all got together, these churches, and we were a few hundred people. And I can remember the man who was speaking, and he was talking about some Indian evangelists, and he mentioned one guy who got on a bus and he travelled for about 12 hours. He got off the bus and then he walked for another 4 hours. He came to a village because he wanted to share the love of Jesus with these villagers. And when he got there, the people greeted him. They gave him something to drink, but in whatever they gave him to drink, they put some poison in there, and this man was poisoned. He nearly died. He crawled back to the bus station. I mean, when he walked, it took him 4 hours. I don't know how long it took him to crawl back. He managed to get on the bus. He was in hospital for a time, and his desire, what he said, I want to go back to that village, and I want to go and share God's love with them. And this speaker from New Delhi, he challenged us and he said, who wants to do that as well? Who wants to share the love of God with many people despite what difficulties they are? And that touched my heart, and I knew something. I wanted to work for God. Now at that time I thought the only way to work to God is to do some full-time Christian ministry. In the meanwhile, I know you can work for God by being in full-time Christian ministry, but you can also work for God full-time as well as working in some secular job or doing some other work. I didn't know that at that time. But anyway, the army sent me then from Bahrain in the Middle East, from the Persian Gulf. They sent me to Germany. And I was in Germany for a while. I found a German church. And then I met this lovely German lady. And I had some strong feelings for her. And I asked her if she would marry me. And graciously, she agreed. But we thought, this is, I know people are listening to this from different cultures, but in our culture, that's okay. It's a little bit old-fashioned, but I thought that it would be best to ask her dad if it was all right for me to marry her. And so that's what we did. We had a talk one Saturday afternoon, and I asked my future father-in-law if I could have the hand of his daughter in marriage. And he began to tell me about his life, how that when he was a young man, he was just 18, and he was called up to go into the German army. The Second World War was, had started, and he was sent to the Russian front. He had to fight against the Russians. He had no desire to be a soldier. He had no desire to be in the war. He didn't see any point in fighting, and so on. And he suffered greatly during his time in the military. Eventually he was captured. He was put into a prisoner of war camp. He suffered with not having enough to eat. He was very, very sick. He got dysentery. He almost died. And in fact, it's a miracle that he even got back home, because the doctors had put him amongst the dying. He's not going to make it. But by a miracle, he did make it. He was sent home on a train. He was only, I think, about 35 kilos when he got back home. But he said he told God that God would bring him through this time, and if he ever had a family, he wanted his whole family to serve the Lord. And you couldn't miss this, because I think in every room in the apartment where they lived, there was a plaque, there was something on the wall, a text from Jeremiah chapter 24, and it said, "But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And he challenged me to serve the Lord, and I said, yeah, I want to serve the Lord, but somehow I'm waiting for a word. I'm waiting for God to speak to me, and then I know which way he wants me to go. Okay, so I don't think he was quite happy with my answer, but he had to leave it at that. What can you do if you have kids? You got to do as they tell you. So anyway, in the night, I was quite moved by this. I was thinking about it, prayed about it. In the night when I slept, I had a dream. And in this dream, I saw a Bible open, and somebody was reading the words from Matthew chapter 9 and the verse 36 and 37, that when Jesus saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. They were being hassled and so on, without guidance, without protection, or without any orientation. And he called his disciples to him, and he says, "Hey guys, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest that I send workers into his harvest field." The next morning, I talked to my wife, who was my fiancée at that time, and I told her what I'd experienced, and we thought about that, we prayed about that, we went to church, our home church, and you know what, the pastor got up to preach, he opened his Bible, he said, "My text for this morning is Matthew 9, chapter 36 and 37, and he began to read it, and I don't know how he explained it to us, other than I knew it was like a sword piercing my heart. I later went to Bible school and spent 30 years in church ministry before I started doing itinerant work. And the motto of the Bible school I attended, which I didn't know at that time, but it was "Pray the Lord of the harvest that he sends workers into his harvest field." And what I think is so exciting and so impressive, that the Bible has been given for every single person here on earth, but it was given, throughout all time. But God takes individual people like me, like you. And he takes individual Bible verses like Matthew chapter 9, verse 36 and 37, and he brings the person and the Bible verse together to give guidance and show the way ahead. And I'm so excited that God is still doing that, and this is something that I've experienced many times in my life. I hope you experience that, and maybe a good step to doing that is to start to open the book and to read it. That was a little bit personal today, something what I experienced many, many years ago, but I'm still moving forward because of these things. I hope that you have a good day. God bless you. You're Bob Hatton, your encourager.